You were telling me a certain form that you were filling out a while back?
Oh, there's a couple of them. You mean the proof of claim form that they have to sign under penalty of perjury?
Yeah, there's a couple of them. Explain it. We got tons of time, so just take all the time you want in the world and tell these people what you were trying to tell me, because it was pretty damn good, but we never recorded it. So, you know what, you got to get on the show one day, and we got to record this.
Okay, I'll try to remember what it was, because there's actually a few things, but let me start from what I think.
Look, as much as you want. I'll give you, tell it, okay. It takes you 3 hours to explain it. Take 3 hours. It's fine by me.
Well, the first thing is to, in my opinion, is the linchpin for them to bother you in a court is the assessment. Okay, that's real important. Like think of you got a locomotive train, and it's pulling a chain of other boxcars. Well, between the locomotive and the boxcars, there's a hitch, and there's a linchpin. You pull that linchpin out, and all the boxcars get left behind. So the linchpin with a case with the IRS is the assessment. If they don't have an assessment, they can't move against you civilly or criminally, with only one exception that I know about, and that's obstruction. So if if they wanted to come into your business or your home and take your records, and you block the door, they could charge you with obstruction. But I've never heard of them doing that as a standalone charge. That's something they usually just add in. So the point is, if you're in trouble with the IRS, the first thing you want to do is find out who did the assessment against you and send them a letter. So that's the first thing. So you do that by a Freedom of Information Act request. So it's a one-sentence question. Who is the agent that did the assessment between years whatever, 2010 to 2013? And so that now, if you can attack that, you're attacking that linchpin. And you get the letter out to that agent, and you ask the usual questions that we ask that expose that they didn't have any authority to do what they did. They can't verify the debt, and you do your letters, and now you're set up to do your claim. So people have asked me this many times, and I always try to, I hope I'm getting better at articulating it. That assessment is crucial. Knowing who signed that assessment is crucial. So let me approach it from another angle to make it clear. If you've got a levy on your paycheck, or you've got a lien on your house or your business, the levy or the lien came from an assessment. There can't be a levy or a lien without an assessment.
Well, there can't be a lien or a levy without a judgment either.
Well, that's true if we were dealing with honest people. I've got a $565,000 lien on me filed in 4 counties, and they never got any kind of judgment from anybody.
But like I said, if you hear what's going on in Texas, the state of Texas isn't putting up with that baloney anymore.
Right. See, that's great. And I think there's another state. I think it's Oklahoma. Hopefully,
well, what I'm saying, if Texas knows how to do it, this is what I'm trying to say, and Joe Average should be able to do it the same exact way. So,
right.
All you have to do is take it into it. And if somebody tries to put a lien or levy on you, I don't care who it is. All you have to do is say, you know what, I'll meet you up where, like, say they're putting a lien on you in, say, Douglas County. I don't even know if there is a Douglas County. Just say Douglas County. All you got to do is to go to the Douglas County District Court and say, somebody's got a lien on me through the county recorder's office here, I heard. Yeah. I require a hearing, or, it's like a trial. I require a hearing on this matter. I want this lien lifted off my property immediately.
Right.
And you have a right to a trial.
See, I agree with that, but let me just give you a different angle on it. And it's okay, so what you just did is you solved the civil side of them being able to enforce that, but what you didn't solve, and as we now know, in my case, is you didn't get rid of the underlying assessment. So what they'll do, even more likely, is retaliate and come after you criminally because you didn't get the assessment out.
They can't come after you. They can come after I, and all I have to do is separate the man from the person. And they say, right. Who are you coming after again? You're coming after you? No, you're not coming after you. You're coming after I. You're coming after a man. Wait a second. You can't do that.
Okay. No,
and I'm not going to give you guys the Supreme Court case in which you get cited from. If you guys don't believe me, go F off.
No,
I'm so tired of, no, but I'm telling you, man, there is a Supreme Court case that says that. So what I'm trying to say is because people say, well, Karl, give me the citation. It's like, no, because you guys are going to go run down, get the citation, you're going to write exactly word for word what the United States Supreme Court said in this case. And that's an opinion.
Right.
So what?
Right.
And then I got to get you guys to stop saying that. This running said, well, Bob said so, or Karl said so. So since Karl said it's got to be true, since the Supreme Court said it's got to be true, since Jesus Christ said it's got to be true. No, what do you believe is true?
Right. Right.
And that's how you got to stand in court. Not because, well, Karl said so, that's why I did this. Oh, Jesus Christ said so, so this is why I'm doing it. It's like, oh, yeah, is Jesus here today? No. Well, then who gives an F? Is Karl here today? No. Then who gives an F?
Well, if you were going to go down that road and do it that way, then I would suggest augmenting it with doing a Freedom of Information Act request for what's called a proof of claim, the official IRS.
No,
so that way you get the one-page answer. I've done it several times. So what happens is you get back a single-page answer, and it says, and it will always say this, by the way. I've done quite a few of them. There is no proof of claim. That's what it says. So now when you walk into court with your case, like you just suggested, you've got something signed by the director in the IRS in blue ink, because they sign all the FOIAs in blue ink. And so the judge is in a box. Of the magistrate.
Right. Well, it's not right. It's not even so much the judge or the magistrate's in the box. It doesn't matter because it's your court.
Right.
You're not surrendering it to them. You're just saying to them, look, this is I'm having a hearing on this matter. So, like I said, it's still your court, and you're the one who informs the judge or the magistrate and says, this is what I want you to bear witness to.
Right.
I don't judge anything. I just want you to bear witness that this was true, and nobody came forth to rebut it. I don't need your opinion. I just need you to bear witness that and then because that's what Gus told me that you forgot to do when you created your own little court there. You forgot to create the order of the court.
Right.
So when you guys make the claim, you guys got to make the claim and you got to bring forth an order at the same time, not just a claim.
Well, the other huge.
If you don't bring forth the order, what are you ordering from them to do? Nothing. They just say, okay, you got a wonderful claim. Now what?
Well, we did put an order in. It was too late.
I'm trying to say that he told me you put it in the last second, but I'm trying to say to people got to understand they got to do both, and then not to do it in 2 seconds while they're standing outside of the courtroom.
Yeah.
I'm trying to show you there's two things. It's like you said, you say the county recorder, you discovered gold. I was like, okay, I made a claim that I discovered gold, so I don't want nobody to jump my claim. So you're creating an order at the same time. So you create the order, so then I wish for nobody to trespass upon this claim.
Right.
You just make a simple claim. Yes, I found gold. Okay, great. Now, what do you want us to do with that? Well, I want you to file into the county recorder's office that I discovered gold and I don't wish anybody to trespass, and I'm going to work this field for 7 years, and after 7 years, anybody else can have at it.
Right. Yeah.
So you got to place a claim, and you got to place the order at the same time.
Honestly, I'm glad that things went the way they did, because if I won, I wouldn't have learned much. But because it went wrong, we did a forensic on it and figured out everything we did wrong or I did wrong, and I learned a lot from that. I mean, it was just a great education.
Yeah, it's like the one guy up there in Canada. I'm trying to remember the guy up there I think his name was Brian. Like, he won in a Canadian court. He said, like, when he was like 20 years old. It's like, yeah, but it's easy to win by default. It's easy to win when the other side didn't show up. So if the Chinaman didn't show up against you, you would have said, oh boy, I won.
Right.
How do you know? The guy didn't show up.
Right.
So I can't tell if it's truly a win unless you really had your day in court and everybody was there. And
Right.
Like I said, I want to see from beginning to end. Everybody was there. Everything went from beginning to end. That's what I want to see, and see how the results are then.
I'm trying to remember if that's what you wanted me to answer on that IRS thing, but those are my two best learning lessons from 14 years of fighting them is do the FOIA to get the assessment, or in the example that you gave where, maybe you're strained. And
I remember you went on and on for about an hour explaining, like, I don't remember if it was the monetary or something. You were talking about something. beyond. It was really interesting.
Now I remember. So let me go back to that. That's an administrative approach that if you didn't know the common law and you weren't going to go down this path of filing a claim and getting your own lawsuit, there is a very powerful administrative process in their world. And so now I remember what you're talking about, so I'll explain that and I'll do it more briefly. What happened was in the mid-'90s, congressmen across the country were just getting thousands and thousands of letters about abuse. I remember watching it on CNN late at night.
That's what we were talking about.
Right. So they were flying these people, these victims, let's call them, in and interviewing them on the floor in Congress. And, I mean, it was horrendous stories, like people getting pulled over at the traffic lights and IRS agents surrounding them and pulling them through the window of the car and taking their wallet like a robbery, going into old age homes and taking wedding rings off of old ladies. I mean, it was just awful what these people were doing. So long story short, they held all these hearings. Then they began to put together a new law, and it was called the Internal Revenue Reform and Restructuring Act of 1998. Very significant. Also known as the Taxpayer Bill of Rights 3. I've read the whole thing many times. And the bottom line, without going into all the detail, the outcome of it was there were certain remedies, and I've used these remedies for other people, and they worked very, very well. One guy got over a $500,000 lien that was on his personal account, his restaurant, and his wife's businesses, and got it removed in 10 days. So that was done by what's called a 911 form. You can Google that.
That's right. That's what we were talking about. Now I remember.
So a 911 form, now think about this law that they passed as a funnel, okay? And the output of that funnel is these remedies. So the 911 form is one remedy. The other remedy is they said no longer can an IRS agent or officer do things without the prior approval of the Tax Inspector General. So it was almost like the Congress said, okay, we're going to make the Tax Inspector General the internal police force of the IRS. And so without going into a long thing on that, it has to do with criminal prosecution, certain types of assessments. So you can do a Freedom of Information Act request and say, hey, I want to see the matching contract, that's what it's called, that gave this agent the authority from the Tax Inspector General to do this action. I've done numbers of them, and every single time it comes back, no authority was granted. Right. So that's remedy number two. Now, backing up a little bit, with the 911 form, make sure you follow. It's actually pretty simple, but you can screw it up if you don't read the instructions. A key thing in there is that they have to be causing you some type of harm. It can be mental terror. It can be the possibility of loss of your job. It can be that it's got to be some kind of hardship. It can be strain in your marriage. It can be you're not going to, if their assessment or levy or lien or whatever they're going to do goes through, you're not going to be able to pay your bills. So you got to be sure when you fill that 911 form out that you articulate what the hardship is. Now, here's the interesting thing. You file that with the taxpayer advocate. Every state has one. And the taxpayer advocate has the authority to stop any and all functions of the IRS relative to that matter, even criminal prosecutions. Now, I haven't personally seen that happen on a criminal prosecution, but I definitely have seen levies come off. I've seen liens come off. I've seen the last guy that I helped when I showed him how to do it and we did it. They not only removed the liens off the property, which is, that's kind of a major exercise. They've got to go to the county and lift the lien. The guy was an aggressive, mean, nasty guy. I'm sure nobody's ever heard that before. All of a sudden, he was a lamb. He was nice and polite and trying to help this guy. So it is a powerful tool. Now, there's a third tool came out of all this. This is my personal favorite. It's called if you Google 1203B, 1203B, allegation referral form. So it's form number 12, 217. So I'm rusty on this. 12217. So 12217. That's the form number. But the title of the form is 1203B because it's named after the statute at large that's Section 1203B. So if you Google 1203B allegation referral form, there's a number of items for reporting malicious or fraudulent conduct by IRS agents. And I was told by a certain person that I know that works there, I don't know if it's true or not, that when one of those is filed against them, they can't go any higher in their career. So it can be for violation of constitutional rights, it can be threats, false assessments. You'll see it, it's right on the form. So that's a pretty good form. What I learned to make it effective is you want to have your congressman mail it. What I told the last guy I helped with one is take it to your congressman and have him mail it on your behalf, and they will do that for you. And that seems to put a lot more teeth into it. But start with the 911 and then follow up with the 12217 allegation referral form. And there's information out on the internet about using those. My personal favorite is the lawsuit in a common law court. But anyway,
but still, I try to show people that there are other. It's not just like this common law stuff that I'm doing isn't just some crazy concept of mine. I said, in statutes, you could also find this very similar style that I use in statutes.
Right.
It's like you're saying, you have to show that you're causing me harm, and I know the IRS would never want to ever cause anybody harm. I know you lovely IRS. All you want to do is help people.
Well, you just raised a really good point because you caught it right away, but I bet a lot of people listening didn't quite catch it. These are actually common law remedies. Yeah, they're precipitous of statutes, but think about what I just said. The 911 form is if they're causing you a hardship. Man cannot cause another man a hardship.
Right, and certainly his creation certainly cannot. The creation of another man can certainly not cause harm to another man.
So, what you're saying is it reinforces what you've been talking about.
Right. I just keep it super simple. But like I said, you could say they also keep it very simple, but they want to do billable hours, so they're going to make it 10,000 pages long.
Right.
But in essence, it comes down to the same thing.
Right.
That's what we tell people. You could go statutes and you could go around the world, or you could just take one step backwards and do common law and you're done.
Well, let me just add two things that are real important. On the 911 form, you have to file that with a taxpayer advocate. And believe me, if you send it to the wrong person, they will not tell you. They won't send it back to you and say, "Oh, geez, let me make sure you get this done right." No, they'll just stay silent on it. So you got to put that through the taxpayer advocate. The 12217 allegation referral form, that's a really touchy thing because you're reporting an agent who's doing something bordering on criminal, if not actually criminal. It's a very serious thing to file one of those. You got to file that with what's called the Commissioner's Complaint Department. It's a special office that was set up specifically for that form by statute. And you'll see that, when you get the form. But a lot of people, when they do them, like most people do things, kind of, they're frightened or they're desperate and they don't stop and think and take their time to do it right. They'll send it to the IRS commissioner or the chief counsel or somebody else. If it doesn't land in that department, I'm telling you right now, I've seen it over a dozen times, they will not come back to you and say, "Oh, no, you need to send it over here." So you got to make sure, you got to take responsibility that you're sending it to the right person.
Right.
And another great remedy, don't let me forget to say this, is when you do those forms, you should CC them to J. Russell George. He's the Inspector General, the Tax Inspector General for Tax Administration. His job, what he's paid for, is to watch over improper actions of IRS employees. That's what he's supposed to do.
Yeah.
So you're getting him on the hook, and he's going to be sensitive to that now because he's been called into congressional hearings. I'm sure everybody knows what's been going on in the news for over 2 years now with Lois Lerner and all that stuff. So he's not going to want to ignore your stuff. 2 years ago, he probably would have. but I don't think you would now.
Well, we won't say that.
Yeah, that's just an opinion.
Yeah, that's just an opinion.
I believe.
I'm sure he can.
But probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 85% of the time, those remedies are going to work for you.
Yeah.
Every now and then you're going to... Go ahead.
Like all I'm just trying to tell people is like, that's why I said I'm not going to give you guys the United States Supreme Court case where you got to separate the man from the person. I'm not going to bother. Because, like I said, then everybody starts studying all these ridiculous cases again. And then they're going to say, oh, no, and the IRS, the Supreme Court overturned it in 2011. They said, da-da-da-da-da. You know, it's like, oh, no. I said, look, I'm just trying to show you people that, you know, a lot of the stuff that I do, is they do it as well in statute. But it just, like I said, it's billable hours. I was underneath a car. It's just billable hours, and it's, they're going to make a 20-volume series over this stuff, get thousands of people employed, and put a big, centralized government in place to, make sure all the, the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, just to make it seem like it's more plausible if you got this huge organization behind it, other than just one guy saying, look, just separate the man from the person. That's all you have to do.
Right.
And you'd be like, well, that's too easy. It's like, yeah, that's right. Well, there's got to be more to it, Karl. No, it's not. Because you look at all the Supreme Court decisions all the times, it's usually just a one-sentence conclusion, one-sentence answer why they either, in their opinion, ruled in favor or ruled against the moving party. It's usually just one little simple thing, but then they go on and on and on and on with all their freaking opinions of why.
Right.
It's because it's that thing. I'm trying to remember one of the most famous cases ever in United States history was, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head right now. It was a slave that was in a free state that was brought back to a slave state, but there was in the contract between him and the original owner. Oh, man, somebody's got to know this case. Off the top of the head, black civil rights folks know this case like the back of their hand. And then when he died, his sister didn't honor the contract. She was from Massachusetts, and the Supreme Court ruled against the man. Oh, I wish I could remember what the name of the case is. As soon as somebody says it, I'm going to say, that's the case. But, like I said, I was just upside down under the dashboard of my car, man. So I'm a little lightheaded. It's pretty funny. But the opinion was the longest opinion. That's what anybody Googled. What was the longest opinion from the United States Supreme Court? And it was that case.
Well, I'd like to do that.
Yeah, but what's funny is it said the very first sentence was all you had to read is that the court lacks jurisdiction to hear the matter. That was it. The court lacks jurisdiction to hear this case.
Wow.
And then they went on and on and on and on. It was with the longest opinion in history of the United States Supreme Court. And that's what I try to tell you guys. Is usually, if you want to know the opinion of the ruling is one sentence long. Now, if you want to hear every one of the 9 judges or however many judges they had back then, 13 judges, whatever they had, you could go on and on and on forever with listening to the opinions if you want to.
Right.
But it just clearly said that this court does not have jurisdiction over this matter. What it was is why they didn't have jurisdiction over the matter is because the man was considered property, and the court doesn't have this. The court doesn't have the capacity to tell another man what he can and cannot do with his property. So as far as the court was concerned, that black man was in a slave state, and the sister inherited the black man. So as far as they were concerned, it's property. But if you want to hear the most ridiculous, beat around the bush, go around the answer, go around the direct answer, they wouldn't just say property. They wouldn't use the word property. The courts have this huge aversion, this huge fear of using the word property in any of their rulings because they know if you guys figure out what the word property means, they basically don't have a job. There's basically nothing left for them to do.
Karl,
so, let me discuss real quick, man, what was that Supreme Court case? Hey, Gus. Yeah, that's what it was. It was the Scott Sanford case. It was Dred Scott case.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
It was no master's property can be interfered with or ruled upon or made any decision on what a master could do with his property. It's very simple ruling. So it's funny. It's like that's why I call them my damn property.
And that's it. There's no ruling. It's never been overturned. That a master can't be told what he can and cannot do with his property. I'm the master of that child. That is my property. It's not a child. It's property. Don't you worry what I define them. Don't worry what I call them. Well, we call them child. Well, I'm not we. I'm the master. I'm the creator. I call it property. Don't you worry what I call it. It's property. Believe me. Trust me. It's mine. Is it yours? No. Then back off. Well, we have a consensus here about our agency and our groups and our panels. It said, F your agency, F your consensus, F your learned studies and panels. It's not an effing child. It's my property. So see cases like that, man. Like I said, it's a two-sentence, like a ruling, but it's the longest like ruling in the United States history, the longest opinion. And it's ridiculous. All they have to say is, we got no right to tell a man what he can and cannot claim is his. If it's his property, there's nothing we can do about it. Next case. But no, they had to make it the longest opinion in the United States. That's the case that started the Civil War.
Right.
Some people were trying to be like these greeny-weeny tree huggers and say, oh, no, a man has no right to property, like Karl Marx people. Karl Marx was popping up right around that time, too, saying that the first thing that, the state has to abolish is man's rights to property. That way man can't own slaves. Well, that's a little extreme, saying that nobody can own property. Just say, hey, how about we just all agree that no man can own another man? How about we start with that? Because that kind of makes sense. That kind of sounds silly, that no God can own another God. That kind of makes sense, that one can't own one. It's got to be something subordinate, something lower. It can't be something that's equal. So that's what it was the Scott Sanford case, and I couldn't remember it. The Scott Sanford case or Dred Scott. Like I said, I couldn't remember.
Kyle, I got one more mega remedy to talk about, but if you want me to.
Yeah, Gus.
Okay, the other remedy is found under 20 USC 7433. Again, this is in the statutory world, in their world, but this was also came out of IRS abuse. Congress passed this law that said if you can show that they did it willfully, which you can easily establish, if you write them letters saying, hey, why'd you do this to me, and they don't answer you, that's it. You've got them for willful. The remedy, the amount they have to pay you is $1 million. If it was by negligence, so they levied your pay and you were the wrong person, which does happen. I have a friend right now who has a monstrous lien on her, and it's because her name is the same as another person's name, and her Social Security number is one digit off, and they won't remove it. So that's kind of in a gray area. But that's $100,000.